There's been some minor discourse, let's say, on this season's Puella Magi Madoka Magica side story, Magia Record, and the mobile game it adapts. In particular, some voices are cropping up to say that despite having the aesthetic of the original series down, such as its art style and music and some returning characters, that Magia Record is Madoka light. Now, it's obviously going to be different in some ways. After all, original showrunner Urobuchi Gen is busy channeling his love of gloom and guns into the YouTube original series Obsolete, and he wasn't on staff for the mobage. But the big thing some are noticing is that Magia Record seems less bleak and despairing, and so these people claim that it's not Madoka enough. That, frankly, is rubbish. But I can't just say that without backing it up, so I'll run through the most common complaints this argument brings up to see why. The first thing I hear a lot is that it feels to some viewers like there are lower stakes. After all, the main cast remains alive halfway through the show, and aside from the anime original character Kuroe, everyone's in the gacha in the mobage, presumably giving them plot armor. First off, you do know series with little to no character death can still have stakes and emotional investment? Magia Record starts with a strong question. What was Iroha's wish? Once we find out the answer to that, we have more questions. Why didn't she get it? Why did she forget? What really happened to Ui? What's the secret of the city? Where did the dreams come from? Why can magical girls in Kamihama create doppels instead of automatically go witch? And what about the small Kyubey? It's the kind of mystery the original had in its setting, with both immediate and far-reaching questions. The dark and existential tone with a side of horror fits the mood of Madoka and gives the story plenty of weight. Besides, that expectation you might have that the show should be letting the bodies hit the floor is something the Madoka franchise would have had to adapt to no matter what. For those of us who don't remember 2011, let me take you back. When Puella Magi Madoka Magica aired, it looked innocent enough. Urobuchi's involvement was initially hidden. Once it was discovered, he said he wanted to try writing a happy story, a reference to something he'd earlier put in the author's notes of Fate Zero. Shock value is a term that gets thrown around a lot these days, but the dark turn of the original show really was shocking. These days, new magical girl series not tied to an existing happy franchise are expected to be dark, violent, and often go way further than Madoka did. There can never be another mommy when what happened to her is now considered expected and tame. In fact, with Magia Record having its own episode 3 twist, and that twist being mommy showing up at all, it seems the writing staff knows that too. This series can't do exactly what the first one did and have the same impact. Another gripe the same people have is how mundane some of the problems seem. The plotlines about misunderstandings or friends fighting where they make up at the end feel too slice of life. I put this to you. Do you remember the original series? Madoka's first wish was to save a cat. Sayaka's disillusionment started with a love triangle. Before Homura became a magical girl, she was a shy new kid who didn't know how to make friends. This franchise has always had, and in fact is built on, mundane problems as a foundation before the witches and the magical girl's circumstances make the problems worse. And we have that here too. For example, take the first urban legend the girls investigate. Sure, Kaede and Rena have an impulsive friendship breakup, but then Kaede tries to make up with her, and Rena, due to her own actions, has to save Kaede from eternal torment. That fits right in with the original's trend of normal problems giving way to more dangerous magical ones. It also fits perfectly with Madoka's biggest theme, that great and widespread suffering grows from small selfish mistakes. And so what if some of these plots do have happy endings? Magia Record wouldn't benefit from tragedy fatigue. As I mentioned earlier, Urobuchi himself had claimed even before Madoka that he had always wanted to write something hopeful, even if his own cynicism made that hard for him. This is just fulfilling that for the Madoka franchise. Even Rebellion was intended to end happily before Shaft demanded a sequel hook, and we got home Lucifer. So these complaints really don't hold water so far, but I'd like to point to one specific thing that tends to come up. Those who take issue with the cast not dying like flies and the happy endings and personal problems have on a few occasions cried out that you might as well be watching Precure. Largely from people who have never seen Precure and have no desire to. Its status as one of the last traditional happy and child-appropriate magical girl franchises, plus the fact that only 3 seasons are licensed and those have subpar official releases, have made Precure a prime target for those who hate the happy stuff. Precure is great and there's nothing wrong with it, but when these people say Magia Record isn't like Madoka, they really seem to be saying that Magia Record isn't like the shows that came after Madoka. For all its tears and darkness, Madoka still ended on a note that hope and love are powerful forces that can change a painful world for the better. The public conscience has started to forget that, because in the aftermath of Madoka's success, the industry flooded with what one of my Twitter followers recently called edgical girls. A few dark series were actually really good, but from messages that the ideal of a magical girl is a naive dream that will get you taken advantage of, to shows that pretend to examine trauma seriously but just want an excuse to show off their torture kink, most were just tirades against love and joy. These shows have been remembered as Madoka-likes, but in the end, most of them really aren't much like Madoka, and yes, it could be argued that Madoka has more in common with Precure. Magia Record is one of the better pieces of the Puella Magi expanded universe, and a big part of that is indeed that it doesn't go full edgelord. The hope and happy endings were already there in Madoka, and with the biggest drive of the Magia Record plot being that there may be a way to save magical girls from their fates, the emphasis on those things makes sense. Both traditional magical girl fans and followers of the Madoka franchise will find here what they've been waiting years for. That might be the most important thing. This is Secret Identity Studio, and somebody keep me from installing the mobage. I mean, I already accidentally installed FGO.